Pennsylvania was ground zero last night as both presidential candidates campaigned in the Keystone State. While Kamala Harris was delivering a roundhouse punch in the head to Donald the Elder, Trump was showing the crowd that he was young and hip, deciding the best way to do that was to eat some shrooms and groove to the music. Yeah, he did that for half an hour. So while Trump was showing the benefits of being stoned, Kamala Harris was going multimedia, doing something that has never been done in presidential politics, showing video at her live event of her opponent. And it worked.
So here tonight, I will show you one example of Donald Trump's worldview and intentions. Please roll the clip.
The worst people are the enemies from within.
The enemy from within. Those people are more dangerous, the enemy from within, than Russia and China.
These people should be put in jail the way they talk about our judges and our justices. Now, if you had one really violent day, one rough hour, and I mean real rough.
Kamala rolled out the greatest hits of Trump showing his true fascist self. In the words of Jen Psaki, Kamala and her team are ratcheting up the campaign.
22 days to go before the election, Kamala Harris definitely ratcheted up the stakes to about an 11 in the last half of that speech. And she did that in a fairly unique, kind of remarkable way by using Donald Trump's own words against him and playing his words at her own rally. Kamala Harris is doing her best to make sure people don't get numb to it. Now, as for the content of his remarks, it's important to point out that Trump's fascination with using the military against what he calls the enemy from within, isn't new. I mean, remember back in the summer of 2020, then President Trump wanted to unleash the troops on racial justice protesters. His own former defense secretary, Mark Esper, quotes him as asking, quote, "Can't you just shoot the protesters? Just shoot them in the legs or something?" Then a few months later, after he lost the 2020 election, he, of course, drafted an executive order to have the military seize voting machines as part of his effort to overturn his loss. And he's openly mused about military tribunals for his political opponents, like for, say, former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney. This has all been bouncing around his head for a while, is my point. So, of course, we should take him seriously. I was just talking with Stacey Abrams about this. When he says he wants to use the armed forces against his perceived enemies from within, which is why we say that a lot on this show. Listen to what he has to say. He's telling us what he's going to do.
Now, Psaki's emphasis on Trump being a threat to the Constitution and bringing the receipts from his past presidency is a stark reminder to people to believe what they're seeing. What's fascinating about her coverage, though, is that she only discusses Trump being out of control in strictly political terms. Kamala Harris went elsewhere.
So you heard his words. You heard his words coming from him. He's talking about the enemy within Pennsylvania. He's talking about the enemy within our country, Pennsylvania. He's talking about that he considers anyone who doesn't support him or who will not bend to his will an enemy of our country. It's a serious issue. He is saying that he would use the military to go after them. Think about this. And we know who he would target. And we know who he would target because he has attacked them before. Journalists whose stories he doesn't like. Election officials who refuse to cheat by filling extra votes and finding extra votes for him. Judges who insist on following the law instead of bending to his will. This is among the reasons I believe so strongly that a second Trump term would be a huge risk for America and dangerous. Donald Trump is increasingly unstable and unhinged.
Especially after last night, with Trump acting like he was at a Grateful Dead concert, the Harris campaign needs to start mobilizing its surrogates, to have them going out on the airwaves demanding Trump's medical records, to make the press hound him for it. Every day, Trump goes out and says something crazy, and every day he provides proof that he is mentally unstable and too old for the job. He left thousands of people stranded in the desert at Coachella because he was too cheap to pay for the buses. And when two people keeled over at the event last night because it was way too hot in the venue, he just made a joke about it being so hot that everyone's going to lose weight. It's time for the Harris campaign to put those things in the spotlight, to focus unrelentingly until the media does its job. Plus, there's an added benefit to it. The more people question Donald Trump's mental stability, the crazier it's going to make him. Crazy is as crazy does. I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.